In 1971, the St. Louis police were baffled by the case of a missing woman named Sally Lucas. Known by her friends as a loving wife and devoted mother, she vanished from her comfortable suburban home without a trace. Every year, close to 80,000 people disappear, seemingly without motive. Sally Lucas was a classic example. Mrs. Lucas had last been seen leaving the town and country shopping center with an armful of packages. Detectives spent frustrating hours piecing together her last day. They suspected foul play. Police had scoured St. Louis but could find no clues to her whereabouts. 3 weeks from the day that Sally Lucas disappeared, Bevy Jaeger contacted the St. Louis Globe-Democrat, one of the city's leading newspapers. She had a hunch. Bill Fustel, the city editor, remembers her call well.
So, police were at a dead end. There have been no evidence turned up. I'm not sure psychics are always accurate, but I do think that there is something to this. She touched some garments and a powder puff of the missing woman. And she said at that time that she described the woman whom she did not previously know. She described her fairly accurately: short hair, short of stature, didn't smoke much. And she said she got a picture of some policemen bending over the car near a large body of water. The next day, Mrs. Lucas' car was found on the Gulf of Mexico. I called Lieutenant Kiriakis, and I said, I want to do something unusual, if we can do it. And he said, what? And I said, I want to bring the psychic out and let her sit in this car and see what kind of impressions she obtains.
Lieutenant Kiriakis has been with the St. Louis police for 18 years. The veteran detective was taken aback that Fustel wanted to bring a psychic into the case.
Well, my real feeling was that he's got to be kidding or he's putting me on just a little bit. I really didn't think he was honestly serious at the time, but he was.
But Mrs. Jaeger asked if she could sit in the car. I kind of sat back and I thought, boy, this is really going to be something. I'll be surprised if anything comes out of this.
Psychics claim to be able to receive vivid impressions through the sense of touch. Sitting behind the wheel of the Lucas car, as Bevy demonstrated for us, a whole series of visual images flooded through her mind. She appeared to be lost in a deep trance.
She sat in the car with a pad and a pen for about 10 minutes, and she wrote down many things on that paper. And at one point, about 6 minutes into the time she was in the car, she got a terrible look of agony on her face, of pain. She began to sweat very heavily.
The car gave off strong psychic vibrations. At first, the disconnected pictures that Bevy said flashed through her mind made no sense at all.
My notes were full of letter C's and things like that. Horses' heads. There was also a small bridge, not a large bridge. And there were some pillar-type mailboxes, the kind you find out in the country. I was leaning forward to either put the key in the lock or pull it out of, and as I did that, I was struck a very, very severe blow on the right side of the head. When I was out of the car, they handed me her car keys, and at that time, it broke me up completely. I couldn't go on with it at all, because I then realized from holding her keys that she had not been dead when she was taken out of the car and flung into the ditch. She was still alive.
I think one of her first comments was that she felt an intense pain to the right side of her head. And then the other impression was water and a bridge and an airport. And then one of the last impressions was that of a horse, or something to do with a horse.
The clarity of Bevy's vision compelled her to personally take up the search. She reasoned that the best place to begin was the locale that most closely matched her psychic impressions. Bevy began to search the 10-square-mile area of Babbler State Park, just northwest of St. Louis. She was accompanied by her husband, Ray, and psychic student Jim Mueller. At first, the idea of penetrating such a vast and wild tract of land seemed hopeless.
Hey, Ray. Hey, Jim, come here a minute. I feel some kind of pull out in that direction. Not right here, but like way over, down there. Can we get there from here?
Yes, roundabout, but we can get there.
Well, okay. Well, I think that's right. Let's go.
Yeah, let's go.
An inexplicable force inside Bevy's body seemed to pull her in a definite direction. She had no idea what she would discover in the thick underbrush of Babbler State Park. As Bevy, Ray, and Jim followed the psychic trail, they began to notice significant clues that corroborated the mental images Bevy had received in Sally Lucas' car. A small airport called the Spirit of St. Louis was less than 2 miles away. The Babbler riding stables, then the road sign, Wild Horse Creek, intersecting Highway C. Could this have been the C that kept appearing in Bevy's notes? A row of pillar mailboxes confirmed that she was heading in the right direction. And then, the final clue. One that came chillingly close to her psychic vision.
Now, there's a bridge up ahead. Maybe that's the place we ought to stop. But the creek looks like it's crossing the road. Just pull on past the bridge. Maybe we ought to look this place over here. My notes were full of letter C's and things like that. Horses' heads. There was also a small bridge. And there were some pillar-type mailboxes, the kind you find out in the country. So finally we stopped the car and we got out and we decided that this area looked so right we might as well just look a little closer. The terrain just looked right. It felt right. We started to tramp around a little bit. I can't explain that exactly, but there was a feeling in the body somewhere that there was something, and it was not far. It was almost as if my body was a magnetic needle, and it was seeking. It was honing in on a certain direction.
The date was September 4th, 1971. They searched until the light became too dim to see any longer. Bevy was sure she was within a hair's breadth of finding the body and planned to return to the site the next morning. But the following day, a torrential rainstorm hit St. Louis and prevented Bevy from continuing her search. 2 days later, Mrs. Lucas' body was washed out of a gully in Wild Horse Creek. The body was less than 150 feet from where Bevy Jaeger's had been searching.
Well, it was about a day or two after we had found the body and had processed the scene and everything like that.
And it came to me right then. I said, my God, everything she told us on that day in the car before we found Mrs. Lucas came true. the horse, which was Wild Horse Creek Road, the airport, which was close by, the water, and the bridge. And also, on the right side of her head, the skull was crushed. And these were not things she could have known anyway.
I have no way of accounting for it in any way. It was just a total mystery to me how she could be that accurate.
What inexplicable force was it that compelled Bevy to search the ravines of Wild Horse Creek?